The road was long and endless. I must have passed 10 or so cities. Each from a distance was dark and grey. I now thought that each and every city had been turned into this devastation. I parked the bus on the edge of a bridge over a river. I walked down to the extent of the bridge. The leaves of autumn still remained with yesterday's news. As I walked kicking the dust of human civilization along, it felt as if time itself had been slowed down. It reminded me of a time when I used to walk back and forward from college devoid of company. It felt as if all those autumns had once again returned. I looked from the bridge over the river towards the city, across the waves, and saw the familiar sights of dusty grey, worn-out buildings, fronts missing, and an eerie silence which came with all its pain. As I walked off the bridge, machine gun bullets sparked off the golden bridge. I threw myself to the ground. My eyes looked forward. I saw a man with a large beard charging, machine gun in hand, straight towards me. Then I saw the sole of his boot. I woke up, blood dripping from my cheek, tied up in what appeared a dark cellar. My captor stood in front of me, almost as if he was awaiting my awakening. The man wore a heavy beard. His eyes were yellow in colour. He would cough and splutter, choking out large white balls. His posture was crooked, to say the least. His arms appeared longer than was normal, his hands constantly shaking, which was extremely worrying, as he had his finger in the trigger of his fully armed machine gun. He continued to look at me as I did him. I wondered what he made of me, why indeed he had decided to kidnap me. But attention was lost, as then I heard a small cough. I turned my hand to the right and saw another prisoner. It was a boy, who could have not been of more than 10 or so. The boy was also looking at me. His bright hazel eyes shined with an ease. They were puffy and tear-stained. His face had a fair complexion, but it was the gaze towards me of such hope. I immediately turned towards the bearded man and opened my mouth to speak, but before I could utter a word, he slapped me with the back of his hand. "Don't you dare judge me. You think I like doing what I do. It's got to be done. That's all." "What has?" I asked. He ignored me and continued on his own path, or so I thought. "I hope you're going to be better than the last one. I had to kill him. I don't want to have to kill you. Please don't ask me to kill you." "I won't," I said most effectively. "Oh, you will. They all do, you see. Him, who's last the longest, doesn't talk back much, but just enough." He knelt down by me, placed his bulky hand on my kneecap, and began to squeeze it tight. As he did so, I could hear it click in and out of its socket. I screamed in agony. As I did so, I noticed he did not watch what he was doing, but was transfixed with the pain clearly displayed in my eyes. In pain, it is such sweet joy, but it's not as I would like it to be. Once you've killed one man, the sweetness can soon become sour, and one is endlessly looking for a new high to replace the tawdry. Sometimes I spend a lot of time wishing I wasn't the man that I find that I am. Once you've washed the dry, crusted blood of someone you wished could have been your friend, you feel a sense of remorse that only a killer could know of. Oh, how I wish I were not the man that I find that I am. Can you understand that? Do you see that inside me also beats a heart that only needed to be found? I often wonder, could I have been different if I had found someone earlier? Was I always doomed to this triumphal fate? As he spoke his last words, his voice was raised, deep but disturbing in the extreme. I did not know how to answer him, or whether indeed he was speaking or whether indeed the speaking got me at all. I opened my mouth to say some carefully chosen words, but before I could, he laid another fist into me, this time my stomach, winding me. He walked over to the child I watched with anticipated horror. He bent down close to him and placed his hands down his hair to his neck and held it tight, almost one might say, in a loving gesture. The boy did not seem to have any cuts or bruises on him, but his eyes, staring wide towards me, filled me with rage. I tried to pull my hands free from the tightly bound rope. He saw me struggling and turned his attention, thankfully, back onto me again. "Why have you captured us? Have you never found yourself lonely?" "Yes, haven't we all?" I said. "Then there is your answer, friend. May I call you a friend?" "I hope I may." He pulled himself up and walked off, saying something about needing to get some food. The cellar was dark and damp. One window lit diffused light through due to its dirty condition. I looked towards the boy, who again was looking towards me. "Are you okay?" I said softly. He didn't answer me. "We're going to get out of this, don't you worry," I said, not knowing whom I was reassuring more. "Please, mister," he said. He only said 2 words, but his tone and pitch, the way in which they were delivered, touched my heart, and I felt a connection with this boy, whose wide eyes gazed onto me. I had always wanted a child of my own when my wife and I were married. The inability to have children caused such heartache, especially around other parents and their children, who would flock to play with us, but soon would leave, but the pain would not. The boy was such an adorable boy, who looked up to me as if I were his father. Later on, before the bearded man returned on hearing his footsteps, possibly in fear, he held his arm out, so then I could hold his hand. It was strange, I thought, how such a love between father and son, parent and child, can bring to even the most ineffectual man. It was such a special love, and within was a power that no criminal could obtain. It filled me with anger, that if it were physically manifested, it would rip its way through these ropes and through that man. I would have wished to transfer my anger physically, as when the bearded man returned, he undid the ropes of the boy and dragged him away with him. I shouted out, "Where are you taking him? Take me! What are you doing with him?" But only the boy's cries gave answer to my most awkward of questioning. For the next hour I pulled, yanked, tugged at the ropes which bound me tight. The only marks they made were through my wrists, but this pain was easier to bear than what was occurring within the chambers of my heart. Eventually I managed to fray the ropes, and then I was free. I slowly approached the door, turned the handle, and tilted my head between the gap of the door and the panel. I could see nothing, as there was only a few candles lighting the corridor. I opened the door a bit more and squeezed through the gap. As I walked down the corridor, I heard moaning and groaning, but it was not the boy. The voice was older, mature. Maybe it was the bearded man, but again, there was more than one tone that groaned out. There were several doors on my left and right, so I stepped cautiously up to the first one and slowly opened it. I was confronted with a macabre scene. A light shone down from the ceiling, highlighting a man caged into an armchair. Metal grids held down his arms, legs, and connected his face to the back of the chair. His mouth was wide open, his tongue was missing. Was this possible? The man that he had said he killed. Maybe when they talked too much, he removed them, as well as the offending article.